Imagine a beautiful island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, famous for its massive waves, a paradise for surfers. But who would have thought that behind its beauty lies a dark history of nuclear bomb testing from decades ago? Radioactive waste, military secrets, and forgotten people slowly turned into deadly terror. When 4 female surfers came just to enjoy the waves and take a vacation, they didn't realize that their first step onto the island was the beginning of a nightmare. The threat didn't come from sharks or storms, but from humans who had lost their humanity. This is where the survival story on a forbidden island begins, where courage, betrayal, and a dark past collide with waves that bring death. It all started with dark facts from the 1960s era. At that time, the French government aggressively carried out nuclear bomb tests in the waters of Polynesia. For those who don't know, Polynesia is a group of islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Those nuclear tests clearly had a huge impact, with thousands of tons of radioactive waste released into the sea. Slowly, the effects damaged the environment and the lives of the Polynesian people at that time. Now, time jumps to the modern era. The Polynesian islands have turned into a popular tourist destination, especially for surfers who love challenging massive waves. This is where we meet Sarah, who is covering surfing activities on an island called Teahupo'o. Sarah is a tourist from France who used to be a surfer herself. However, a traumatic incident in the past has made her afraid whenever she faces extreme waves. The injuries from hitting coral reefs while surfing back then are still there, both on her body and in her memory. Even so, on this work trip that also doubles as a vacation, Sarah plans to challenge the waves again, this time with her friends. Sarah has already been on the island for 3 days when she gets news from her 3 close friends who have just arrived in Polynesia. They only have one more flight to take before they can finally reunite and form a women's surfing team again. As planned, Sarah wants to take them to another island that is quite quiet but famous for its big and challenging waves. A short time later, the surfer crew is finally complete and ready to leave. Not long after, a foreign tourist appears and recognizes them as accomplished surfers who once went viral. Sarah then introduces the boat captain named Sam, the man who will take them to a remote island that doesn't even have an official name. But suddenly, Sam asks for extra payment after seeing the larger number of passengers and the amount of surfing equipment that needs to be carried. Sarah explains that over the past few days, she and Sam have been traveling around looking for beautiful locations for her coverage. It was also from Sam that Sarah first heard about the existence of that remote island with massive waves. Even so, the island is also known for holding many mysteries related to ancient customs and culture. Hearing this, Jennifer, Hazel, and Alice become even more eager to surf and camp there as soon as possible. Upon arriving at the island, Sam gives Sarah a radio so they can stay in contact. Sam also tells her to contact him immediately if anything happens or if they need help. Even though it sounds a bit strange, Sam's attention actually makes Sarah feel more at ease. After Sam leaves, Hazel sticks her surfboard into the ground as a symbol of good luck. Hazel, who understands local customs quite well, believes this small ritual is important, just like she always does whenever she visits a new beach. While it's still not dark, Sarah asks her friends to prepare a campfire. They plan to party and have as much fun as possible that night. Sarah also tells them that the next morning they will head to the best beach for surfing. Meanwhile, Sam, who is still out at sea, spends his time getting drunk while looking at photos of his 2 close friends. The same thing is happening with Sarah and her friends, who are enjoying their first night on the remote island. Not long after, Sarah, who is starting to feel a bit tipsy, receives a call from Sam, who claims he just wants to test the radio. Seeing Sarah suddenly look confused, her friends laugh at her instead and offer her another drink. For them, there's no room for gloomy thoughts on a night that's supposed to be full of joy. The next morning, after they're feeling fit again, the 4 girls get ready to head to the beach location. To reach it, they have to walk through the forest following directions Sarah previously got from Sam. In the middle of the journey, Sarah feels like something is watching them. However, Hazel calms everyone down by saying it's probably just a wild animal looking for food. Even so, ever since they first set foot on the island, a mysterious presence has felt like it's been following them. Sarah is shocked when she notices a small statue near their path. Not only that, they also find the remains of an ancient pool, which Hazel says is a marae, a sacred place belonging to the local tribe. Hazel warns Jennifer not to recklessly damage or disturb the sacred area. Unfortunately, Jennifer thinks all of this is an exaggeration and becomes even more curious, especially when she sees a small container filled with strange pills. Hazel starts to lose her patience seeing Jennifer's hard-to-control behavior. Hazel firmly tells her to put back the strange pills she took from the sacred area. Not long after, they finally arrive at the beach with the massive waves that have been the goal of this trip from the very beginning. But before actually heading into the water, the four of them take some time to take photos together to capture the moment. When they start surfing, Sarah gets dragged by a massive wave, causing her past trauma to come rushing back. Memories of the accident she once experienced resurface. As she tries to push through, Sarah sees a large shadow in the water that she thinks is a shark. Panic becomes unavoidable when Hazel is suddenly attacked by something horrifying and loses her life, leaving behind only a piece of her leg. In the chaos, Sarah screams, telling her two other friends to get to shore immediately. Jennifer immediately panics when she feels something pulling her leg from beneath the water. It turns out the figure attacking her isn't a sea animal, but the island's inhabitants who had previously killed Hazel. The situation gets even worse when Alice is captured. Meanwhile, Sarah and Jennifer try to escape toward the forest, which turns out to be filled with all kinds of deadly traps. During the escape, Sarah keeps trying to contact Sam over the radio. However, none of her calls are answered. Bad luck strikes again when Jennifer is captured. Meanwhile, Sarah is left helpless after getting trapped by a wooden log from one of the traps. Easily, the island's inhabitants drag Sarah toward their base. Now Sarah and her two friends are held captive by a group of inland tribespeople who live by ancient customs. Not long after, the tribal leader appears, styled like a general. The leader immediately asks who stole his medicine. In order to save Alice, Jennifer finally admits what she did at the sacred pool and apologizes for taking the medicine. However, for no clear reason, the general instead kills Alice. Sarah and Jennifer can only stand frozen as they witness the tragic death of their friend. The next day, Sarah wakes up and realizes that she and Jennifer are being kept like livestock. They beg one of the tribespeople to set them free. However, that hope vanishes when the general appears again. The general claims himself to be a god with full control over the island and reveals his hatred toward outsiders, whom he believes have polluted his land. Hearing this, Jennifer explodes with anger because two of her close friends have been killed, even though their only reason for coming was to surf. The general warns them not to resist or try to escape, because soon Sarah and Jennifer will go through a special ritual. Jennifer is overwhelmed with fear, imagining what kind of ritual they are about to face. Sarah tries to calm Jennifer by saying that they might not be killed. What angers Jennifer is the fact that Sam never warned them about these strange island inhabitants. Sarah then remembers what Sam said the night before, telling her to be careful because the island was supposedly filled with demons. Unfortunately, because they were both drunk at the time, Sarah took his words as a joke. Jennifer can't understand how Sarah could be so naive, even bringing her friends to such a dangerous place just for work. At the same time, Sarah recalls Sam's story about his two close friends, who turned out to have also become victims on the island.
Et moi j'ai fui.
Tu savais.
Then, several villagers come to take the two captives, because Sarah and Jennifer are about to be married off to the strongest men in the tribe. Before the wedding ritual begins, an old woman prepares the two brides by rubbing oil all over their bodies to make them look shiny. After that, they are dressed in worn-out wedding gowns that appear to have been used many times for previous victims. Not long after, the forest-themed wedding celebration begins. Sarah and Jennifer panic even more, realizing their lives are truly in danger. The general calls in his top man, known as the strongest prince, to help increase the tribe's bloodline. The man can sense Sarah's condition just by smelling her, and he ends up being more interested in Jennifer. Jennifer fights back fiercely and manages to knock the prince down. However, his strength isn't completely gone, and he's still able to block them as they try to escape. Overwhelmed by deep grief, Sarah takes advantage of the moment when the island inhabitants are busy partying to escape. When her action is discovered, Sarah removes the clothes that are slowing her down. She keeps running through the forest, which is filled with deadly traps. Sarah only has a short amount of time to get away before the general arrives at the location. As her escape nearly comes to an end, Sarah is faced with two terrifying choices: die after being captured, or risk her life by jumping into a ravine dozens of meters deep. With the last bit of courage she has, Sarah chooses to jump. That reckless decision ends up saving her from their pursuit. Even so, Sarah is now lost, with no idea where to go. Meanwhile, Sam, who has just woken up, starts to feel uneasy. Since the night before, Sarah hasn't contacted him at all. Worry begins to set in, remembering what happened to his two close friends on the island. Because of his concern, Sam finally prepares his weapons and sets out to look for Sarah. During her escape, Sarah finds an old building that turns out to be a former military facility used for nuclear bomb testing in the past. Inside, there are still various weapons, important records, and documents related to the military crew. It's here that shocking facts are revealed. The general explains that he and his group are French soldiers who were once directly involved in nuclear test missions. Because of radiation exposure, they were abandoned and left behind on the island by the French government. To the general, the government's decision back then felt ridiculous. He was considered a dying man, when in fact the radioactive poison is what allowed him and his men to survive until now. From there, his ambition to build a powerful colony was born, and he began to see himself as a god on the island, even hoping that one day he could take revenge on his own country. While gripping a grenade, Sarah mocks the general's plan, calling it insane and meaningless. According to Sarah, all of this should have ended before more victims fell. The loyalty of the general's followers is extreme, to the point where some are willing to sacrifice their lives for the safety of the figure they worship as a false god. Sarah continues her escape toward the beach, which turns out to be not far away. However, an arrow strikes her back, making her steps grow weaker. Calmly, the general approaches, intending to end Sarah's life. At that critical moment, Sam appears and helps Sarah. Thanks to that opportunity, Sarah manages to stab the general's heart using his own weapon. The man, who is nearly 100 years old, finally dies at Sarah's hands. Unfortunately, Sam isn't as lucky. He is shot dead by one of the tribesmen. Even Sam's inflatable boat is destroyed, so Sarah can't escape the island. However, they don't realize that Sam still has a surfboard that Sarah can use to reach a ship out in the open sea. Seeing Sarah almost succeed in escaping, the island inhabitants begin chasing her again. They even send out a large boat to hunt Sarah down at sea. Without realizing it, Sarah manages to break through the massive waves that had been the source of her fear all this time. The waves that once haunted her now become her path to survival. The inland tribespeople don't realize that Sarah is an experienced surfer who has finally found her courage again. With what little strength she has left, Sarah paddles with all her might toward Sam's ship. When she gets there, Sarah still can't believe that her three close friends are gone. Covered in wounds and grief, Sarah treats her body using the remaining alcohol that belongs to Sam. Not long after, French special forces finally locate Sarah. They are a security team assigned to handle areas exposed to nuclear radiation. They already know that Sarah has just come out of a forbidden island that is still under the supervision of the French government. The film ends with a big question mark over Sarah's fate.